Let's go ahead and take a look at, let's see here, Nathaniel Hackett. Yeah, that'll wrap that up. So Nathaniel Hackett's done. The Denver Broncos made the decision yesterday that Nathaniel Hackett is donezo as head coach of the football team. Doesn't even make it through a season. And maybe not the most surprising thing in the world, considering whatever the hell that bag of turds he rolled out and the Broncos rolled out on Christmas Day. And then the fight on the skirmish on the sideline with Brett Rippon and Dalton Risner and all that stuff that took place. Disastrous season. Feels like this probably, not that I can't think of, everyone's trying to put it as Urban Meyer as being a worse one-year head coach. I don't even think it's close. I think Nathaniel Hackett and this one and done is the worst in recent NFL history as far as a coach goes. I don't even know who's close to that. Like maybe Bobby Petrino in Atlanta, but this was a disaster from the get-go, from week one on, and it just never got better for the Denver Broncos.
I will echo that for this reason. I think when you look at the fact that the Broncos were a team that was kind of on the cusp of the playoffs, and he basically got in there as head coach. And not that their defense took a step back. I think they kind of held their own for the large part of the season until
they got
their most recent loss to the Rams. But offensively, I mean, it wasn't anywhere even close. The clock management, the game management by Hackett, it was awful early. They bring in Jerry Rosberg, who, by the way, falls into the best position of anyone. Guy wasn't even on the staff before the season. Now he ends up being the interim head coach. I mean, worked out well for him.
It's a good gig.
But if you think about like where the Jags were when Urban Meyer took over, it's not like he was taking over some playoff, bound or contending team, and it was going to take some time. And they pulled out the rug from underneath them. In this case, this was a roster that I think everyone would admit, even the head coach they fired, they were a quarterback away. They were right there. You brought in Nathaniel Hackett for that reason, to be able to get this offense playing at a higher level, and with a guy like Russell Wilson, who you not only traded for, but you take on this big contract. And it never looked anywhere close to what I think they needed it to in order to ultimately be competitive, not only in that division, but just as an AFC playoff team, given how much competition there is in that conference. And Nathaniel Hackett's a nice guy. I think he's a smart guy. And this is his first crack at being a coach. I'm sure he'll get another shot at some point someday. But, man, he's got a world of changes and kind of looking himself in the mirror and figuring some things out moving forward, because this was a disaster with a team that was primed to go to the playoffs. And I think it's going to be incredibly damning if whoever comes in next turns this team into a playoff team the next year. It's only going to speak volumes about his lack of readiness and maybe just overall ability to be a head coach.
I'm going to first take my victory lap, because you guys do know I enjoy taking my victory laps when I get them.
Well, let's take it with you.
I think you asked the question not too long ago, would he get fired in season? Would he make it out of the season?
I didn't think he would.
And I told you he was out of there. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's all fair.
I know that isn't on. I know that isn't on the sound sheet or anything like that. But I'm gonna take my victory lap on that one. I said he wasn't going to make it.
Yeah, Lee, why is that on the cut sheet?
It's all good. All right, that's first. Thank you for the applause. Thank you.
I really didn't.
Thank you, everyone.
Especially this late in the season, I was like, they'll just let him finish it out, and then we'll just figure it out in the off season. And then it was like, oh my God, it's gotten worse.
Here's why it's worse than Urban, in my opinion. Is because you have an unproven commodity in your quarterback when you're coming in. Like, sure, the hype and the excitement of getting Trevor Lawrence and getting Urban at the same time presented a lot of excitement and a lot of intrigue.
And Jacksonville was picking number one for a reason. They were terrible.
Jacksonville was not good. They were not a good team in the wins-loss column. And then the idea that you were going to have to develop a phenom at quarterback in the early on of their career, whereas this was, to Brady's point, this was a very, very competitive team. Their defense was built well. They had a lot. I mean, you got 3 or 4 receivers on that roster. two of which you could probably, alternate at the one receiver position if you really wanted to. So to me, looking at where they were at and seeing where they are right now, not only does a lot of it, fall at the feet of the head coach, but it falls at the feet of Russell Wilson. And I find it to be interesting. Whoever comes in there is going to have to figure out what is the balance of your team in terms of what are Russell Wilson's limitations as a QB. Because now, just like we always bring up Tom Brady and Bill Belichick, well, you know what? Tom Brady could have went off and did exactly what Russell Wilson did this year. Nothing, right?
Yeah.
And so when you think about it, did Russ have a bad enough season where it put things back into perspective for him? Maybe you took for granted the things that the coaching staffs were doing to minimize what your ailments were as a quarterback, your shortcomings as a quarterback, and now it is all out for consumption in a season where you were brought in, you were given a big contract, they told you could cook, and this is what y'all came up with. So to me, I wonder if that next coach can go to Russ and be like, listen, man, like, we're going to do it this way. This is how we're going to do it. And Russ will be more open to doing it to try to salvage, what took place this year. You don't want to have another year like this. You just don't. If you're Russell Wilson, you can lean on the fact that you've been to 2 Super Bowls. You can lean on the fact that you won one. You can lean on the fact that you got a large contract. But can you lean on the fact that you were a guy that knew how to get it done, and you left because they didn't trust you, or the idea of them not buying into you the way that you wanted them to, and you go to a team that seemingly did, by the way they paid you, and they had the pieces, and you couldn't have success. So I just wonder if that next coach is going to have the opportunity to speak to him in a way where you get a different Russ than what this coach did. You get a more humbler Russell Wilson. You get a more open Russell Wilson to what it may be that they need to do in order for them to be able to take steps back forward into being a winning team.
So Sean Payton reportedly is putting together this all-star coaching staff, and he's already tabbed.
Odd how that came out, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah. It's weird. These things have really stirred up a lot lately. I don't know why that is.
Have you guys seen Schefter's tweets lately? It looks like, all right, who's the agent for Sean Payton?
Yeah.
All right, that guy sends him a copy-paste email, and then Schefter just posts it.
Do you think he just
that literally? It's so complimentary and so over the top about whoever that is. It could be Sean Payton. It could be anyone he's breaking news on. Like, this player suffered an injury, but given the fact that he's got Wolverine blood in his system, he will be back faster than any human being in the history of human beings that is dealing with this particular injury and surgery. Like, it's such an over the top thing he's been doing lately. And Sean Payton was like the first one I noticed. I was like reading it going, well, my God, like, oh, he's putting together an all-star. Okay. Okay. That's thanks, Adam. Thanks, Shefty.
By the way, the fact that Vic Fangio is going to be his defensive coordinator, you can go ahead and X the Broncos out of the potential suitors for Sean Payton. What about Dan Quinn?
But by the way, hence the reason why Adam Schefter didn't put that as part of it, because obviously Sean Payton's agent wants to make sure that all parties are open to potentially bringing in Sean Payton, getting Sean Payton as their head coach. Meanwhile, you would think that logically, it wouldn't make sense to have Vic Fangio come back as defensive coordinator unless he really wanted to say, all right, I liked working here enough and living here enough. I'll go ahead and take a lesser role to come back. I mean, he obviously had the defense playing at a high level, so maybe it would make some sense. But clearly, Schefter didn't include that as part
Dan
of
Quinn. Dan Quinn in
it's
Denver.
Very, very possible.
He interviewed last year.
It's very possible.
Let me throw this out there at you. Whoever goes as the head coach, it's all about what LaVar just brought up. It's all about Russell Wilson and maximizing him. The defense has been playing well now for a while, whether it was Vic Fangio or either other Nathaniel Hackett. Avero, who's the DC now. I guess he turned down the interim head coaching job because he's going to interview for other head coaching jobs. But my point is this. Even if it's Dan Quinn, who that offensive coordinator hire is matters as much as anything. And that's kind of the odd thing about it is, do you go on offense again because you need to get Russell right. And even if you hire the head coach, everyone's still going to be like, okay, great. You hired a great guy. Who's the offensive coordinator? How are we going to fix this offense? Like, it's still the biggest question depending on who you hire. So maybe you lean to more an offensive-minded guy, and maybe you limit it to guys who've had prior experience so you don't go through the issues you had with Nathaniel Hackett. But then you might miss a guy like Shane Steichen in Philly who's done a heck of a job there, calling plays for them and scheming things up. So I think the Broncos are in a little tougher spot than maybe people think in regards to how they go about this hiring process, who they bring in.
Because it's all about it's all about how he's going to react because he's got the cards. He's got the cards. So.